Okay, very good. So another 2 minutes, we will also start the session. Yeah, you can do that. We will start on time.
Good evening, Dr. Saktivel.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Mohan, sir. Good evening, Aguila, madam. Good evening, madam.
Good evening, Saktivel sir. This is Sivaraj.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Sivaraj, sir.
So previous, can we start? People are there already. People are come.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We
Yes,
can
sir.
start.
Participants, ACM Chennai, IEEE Madras and CEC Chennai chapters cordially invite you to a webinar on mobile application development and overview by Mr. Sivaraj Ambat, Principal Consultant and Senior Fellow, Tech Mahindra. Today, mobile development is very important because everybody is using smartphone. So growing popularity and affordability of the smartphones provides opportunities for business to reach their employees and customers and provide easy access to information and services anytime. This session aims to give an overview of the mobile app development landscape, bust some myths about mobile apps, decode why they are so important today, understand how it is different from developing web and desktop applications, and walk through the various options available for mobile app development. Mr. Sivaraj Ambat is a software professional specializing in app development for web and desktop and mobile applications, cloud platforms, and AI. Yes, over 25 years of experience in the industry in diverse roles and companies, ranging from instrumentation and industrial robotic to embedded systems and software application development. He is a recipient of US-based Training Magazine's 2016 Top 20 Emerging Training Leaders Award and also winner of many hackathons and quiz competition. He is presently working in Tech Mahindra, Bangalore as a principal consultant and senior fellow. Over to Mr. Sivaraj Ambat. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, previous sir. So before I start, good evening to everyone. And I would like to thank the respected leaders of CSA Chennai, IEEE Chennai, and ACM Chennai for giving me this opportunity to present to this distinguished audience. And I hope the session will be worth your time. So without any more delay, let me directly start with the session. So what I'm going to cover in this session is purely based on my personal experience, and the views expressed in this presentation are my own and does not represent those of any of my present or previous or present employers. So what we will discuss in today's session, which is actually scheduled for 1 hour, is that we will begin with an introduction to mobile apps, because there is a lot of confusion around what is exactly a mobile app, which kind of apps can be classified as mobile apps, and so on. So I will just clarify those points. And then we will talk about why this buzz around mobile apps, why is it so important and why is it so significant today in the world of business. Then we will discuss the different mobile platforms. You may be already aware of many of these topics, but just to ensure that we are all on the same page, I will touch upon all these points, and then we will get into the core matter of today's session, which is about mobile app development. Now, what happens is, I have seen in my own experience, I have come across very good developers who unfortunately are not able to develop a very good app for the mobile. They are very good when it comes to developing apps for websites, or whether it's a web application or a desktop application or any other application. So what I understood is that they have actually missed out very key principles of mobile applications, which is what we will discuss before we get into the mobile app development. So we will discuss about something called mobile context. We will understand what is this mobile context as a developer or as somebody who is part of the development process. What are those criteria that you have to keep in mind, or what are the considerations that you have to prioritize when you are planning an application. After that, we will step into the different mobile app development options which are available. There are a number of tools and frameworks. I have personally been involved in this field for the past 10 years. In the last 10 years, it's drastically changed. I mean, earlier in 2010, 2011, we only used to have Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. Of course, there were other mobiles as well, but these were the most fast-growing platforms for which we used to develop applications. And the options and tools that we had were very limited. But today you have a plethora of tools and frameworks available for developers. We'll discuss all of them. And then we'll talk about the app development lifecycle. And before we conclude, I will also share some of the learning avenues. So those who are interested, so I can see that many students have registered for today's session. So I hope these inputs will also help them. And we will take the questions towards the end. So in the interest of time, I will request that we will have all the questions and discussions towards the end. And if there is anything else that you are looking for apart from outside this agenda, please post it in the chat panel. We will review them after this session and see how we can address them. Okay, so let me begin with an introduction to mobile apps. So I want to just let you take this short quiz. So what you see on the screen is a simple question. Which of the following do you think qualifies as a mobile app? You have some options listed there. I'm going to pause this slide for some time. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen, or maybe on a mobile, whatever is available with you, just make a note. And after 20 seconds or so, I will switch to the answers so you can review your answers. Okay, 5 seconds more. All right, so let's look at the answers now. You can check your answers now for each of these cases. So I will also explain side by side why it is, why it qualifies and why it does not qualify as well. So first option, Skype on a mobile phone. It's a no-brainer. It's a mobile app, so anything which is running on a mobile phone should be a mobile app, right? So let's just take it for granted as of now that we are talking about a phone which is a smartphone, and Skype is installed on that, so it is a mobile app. What about Skype on a tablet? Now, many of the users who are not regularly using tablets, I mean, those who are continuously using mobile phones, the minute you say mobile app, they only think about a mobile phone, something that you can hold in the hand and so on. But you also have to consider that the same application can be installed on tablets, right? So you can have applications on tablets as well. What about the same application, that is Skype in this case, running on a laptop? Obviously, it is not a mobile operating system. As you know, a laptop generally comes with a desktop operating system, a general purpose operating system. So the application which is built for that particular operating system cannot be considered as a mobile app. The fourth one is a little tricky. Can I proceed, sir?
Sir, I have a question.
Can we take the questions towards the end, if you don't mind?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So the fourth option, that is Skype on a car dashboard PC. Generally, if you look at the older car dashboard PCs, they used to be basically, sort of embedded systems where you used to have some embedded operating system. it never used to be a mobile operating system. So for the general case, we are going to consider that a car dashboard PC, the applications running on a car dashboard PC necessarily need not be a mobile app. But for your information, there are offerings from, for example, Google called Android Auto. Android Auto is an operating system which can run on a car dashboard. So you can actually develop a mobile app for that as well. So this can be either yes or no, depending on what you are actually targeting. Okay. Now, the fifth one, Skype on a smartwatch. Now, smartwatch applications are also considered as mobile applications. And you use the same SDK, the same tools, the same code, in fact, to build the smartwatch applications as well. Now, let's talk about games. Now, some of you might think that games are not considered as apps. But yes, for our discussion, because that is also running on a mobile phone or a mobile device, let us consider for this discussion, if you're considering some of the gaming devices. Need for Speed is a very popular game. You know that it's a popular racing game. And because of its popularity, it has found its place in almost every single gadget today. You can have Need for Speed on a mobile phone or on a tablet, which just like Skype, it's also considered as a mobile app. What about Need for Speed on a PSP gaming device? Now, PSP gaming device, as you know, it's a handheld device. It also qualifies as a mobile gadget, right? It's a mobile device. You can carry it with you wherever you want. But the software running on it is actually not a mobile operating system. So the application which is built on the PSP, it's different. It uses a different operating system or a different API. So it cannot be classified as a mobile operating system. Coming to Xbox, Need for Speed on an Xbox. Again, the OS is different. It is not a mobile operating system. Whereas iPod, in fact, iPod today, it has become less popular because iPhone provides more features and people don't want to invest in a separate media player, which is what the iPod is. But the iPod still can, you can still install the most of the mobile operating systems on an iPod as well. And the last one is about smart TVs. So today there are a lot of smart TVs available in the market which are actually powered by a mobile operating system. It's, for example, Samsung provides a lot of smart TVs with the Tizen operating system. We'll discuss that. And Android also you have in many of the TVs. So you can actually develop applications for smart TVs as well. So what I wanted to basically highlight with this quiz is that when you talk about a mobile app, it is not necessary that it has to be only on what we call as a mobile phone. It can be on tablets, it can be on dashboards, car dashboards, it can be on smart watches, it can be on other devices as well, which are all powered by the same operating system, the mobile operating system. Okay. So with that introduction, let's get into the definitions now. So what exactly is a mobile app? Mobile app is basically, the app is nothing but a shortened abbreviation for application software. It is designed to run on a mobile operating system which may be installed on smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, some media players like iPod, ebook readers. Some of the ebook readers like Kindle and all that, you have some of those models you can actually install the other mobile apps as well. Then you can have the apps running on wearable gadgets. So we have already discussed these points. Now, when you talk about apps, there are two kinds of apps. One is the pre-installed app. So when you buy say a device from the market, whether it's a mobile or a tablet, there are some apps which are already installed by default, the dialer, the SMS application, the calendar application, etc., without which the mobile is of no use, right? If it is going to come only with an operating system, it would be impossible for you to use it for anything. So those are pre-installed apps which are installed by default. Generally, they don't allow you to uninstall them, because without that, even by mistake, if you delete it or if you uninstall it, then you cannot use that functionality. So the pre-installed apps coming from the respective vendors, unless it is customized and you have an option to root it and so on, generally for the users, it is not something that the user can change. Then the second category of the apps is the user installable apps. So users can download and install apps from a distribution channel. Now, the official distribution channel for all operating system, mobile operating systems, is either a Play Store or an App Store. You have these different names. iOS, we call it as App Store. For Android, we call it as Play Store and so on. So this is the official distribution channel. Of course, there are other distribution channels also, and you might have heard in the news recently that Paytm is also working on creating an India-specific channel because of some conflict with the terms of the Google Play Store. So this is how the user can install apps. Now, these apps can be either free or paid. If it is free, then what is the developer? How is the developer going to benefit from that app? Now, some of these apps will be free because the company which is sponsoring the development or the company which is getting this app out probably want to market or increase their branding or improve their branding and so on. So they might make it free. But otherwise, if it's a solo developer who is going to invest time and effort in developing an application and he wants to make some money out of it, these are the options. So in a free app, you can still have some kind of monetization using ads, or you could provide some limited features like how Evernote gives you a certain free space, free storage, and beyond a particular storage limit, or for other features, you will have to go for a paid version. So there could be some feature limited, applications, or it could be a time limited trial version where after some time it stops working and then you'll have to pay. Or it could be a paid app where either it's a one-time fee for downloading the app you will pay, or maybe the app is free, but to access the content within that particular app, like magazine apps or apps which actually provide you books, etc. So there is an in-app purchase which happens. So the developer who's developing the app would have got some kind of tie-up with that particular provider where he will get some commission based on the purchase which is done through the app. So these are the typical channels for monetization of the apps. Now, why this buzz around mobile apps? Why are they so important today? Why is the whole world gaga about mobile phones? So I have done some research around this, and I have given the source also, at the footer of this slide. So when you get the slide deck, you can actually visit those sites and read for yourself. So the top reasons for businesses to invest in a mobile app, if you see, this is the result of a survey which was taken by one of these websites. So 41% is attributed to customer loyalty. By providing an app which is always accessible for the user, customer loyalty improves. Likewise, you can improve the customer service. You can look for increased revenue. There are a lot of sales which are happening through apps today, and there are a lot of promotional offers as well, which you get only when you order it through an app, etc. So it contributes to increased revenue. You can improve your communication with your customer base or with all the stakeholders through an app. And the other reasons, of course, are to stand out from competition, and there are other reasons as well. Now, if you look at the general user, you can see 90% of the time on a mobile is spent in apps and less on talking or sending messages. So that is the result of a survey again taken by this particular site. And 26% of the people search for apps in search engines, and there is a 58% year-over-year in mobile use growth. And 16% business app downloads are projected to grow at 16% in the next 5 years. So these are some statistics which I have collected for you just to know the importance of mobile app. And this statistic actually gives you the penetration of mobile phone users across the world. Now, if you look at the total population, the penetration wise, if you look at it, you have about 66% penetration of the world population. That means you are almost covering more than 5 billion people through mobile phones, which is far more than what internet penetration is. And in fact, what is not given in the slide is the penetration of facilities like electricity, roads, etc. So mobile phone penetration is far better than any other medium. And if you look at the share of global mobile phone connections, you can see that smartphones itself contribute to almost 74.4% of that particular, the penetration that we have got. So 74, almost 75% of the population who are having mobile phones basically have a smartphone. And this is a statistic which I got from this site called bankmysell.com, which says that there are currently 3.5 billion smartphone users. Of course, these numbers can vary because this is from a very reliable source called Statista, which actually provides you more accurate figures. But there are other blogs where I have seen this figure is already crossed 4 billion. So you are actually targeting almost 4 billion smartphone users when you build an app, because when you're putting it in the store, unless your app is built for a specific market, if it's a productivity application or an entertainment application or a game, for example, that is the customer base that you have that you can actually access. And this is the market share of mobile operating systems. And I've just taken this particular view so that you can see over a period of time how many of these mobile operating systems have actually faded out. Now, if you look at the left side of this illustration on the figure, on the left hand side, you can see multiple color bands, right? Each of these color bands represents, like blue is Android, black is iOS, and so on. So you can see there are so many colors there. So we used to have in 2012, like around 5 or 6 top mobile platforms, which included Android, iOS, Windows Phone, Symbian, BlackBerry, and so on, Firefox OS, and so on. But over a period of time, you can see that by 2017 or 2018, almost all the other platforms except 2 have more or less faded out. Now, after 2018, it is more or less iOS and Android which is ruling the roost. Right, so we are going to specifically talk about these 2 platforms because in the future, this is the platforms that we would like to develop applications for. And this is the percentage exact distribution now. Now that you have seen the variation over a period of time, now you can see the actual distribution. Android has almost 75% of the market, and the remaining is with the iOS, and a very small fraction is with Samsung. Samsung has an operating system called Tizen. Earlier, they had some operating system called Bada. So now they have introduced an operating system called Tizen, which is powered, I think, only 1 or 2 mobile phones which are available in India, that the Samsung Z1 or Z3 had that particular operating system. But their target was not only the mobile phones. Their target was, in fact, to have this operating system in every Samsung appliance, whether it's a washing machine, refrigerator, microwave, everywhere, so that you can interconnect all. You might have heard of Internet of Things. So they wanted to have an operating system like an Internet of Things, which connects across all their appliances, which they can control with mobile phones and so on. So they are still working on it. And then you have KaiOS. KaiOS is, in fact, a very interesting operating system. In fact, it has its origins in Firefox OS. So sometime back, there was an operating system which Firefox introduced for mobile phones. It was called WebOS. Unfortunately, it did not really pick up in the market. But one of the forks of that, it was an open source project. So the team of developers, probably in Taiwan, they made a fork of that project. They worked on that, and they introduced what we call the KaiOS. And now this is actually working on what we call the smart feature phones. Now, when you talk about mobile phones, there are 2 types of phones. You have what we call the feature phones, which used to be without the browser, without internet connectivity and so on. And then you had a smartphone, which has the browser and which has internet connectivity and so on. So these were 2 extreme ends that we had, right? Low budget phones used to be feature phones, which do not give you all the facility. Smartphones give you, of course, all the advanced functionalities. Now they have these people have actually introduced a new breed called smart feature phones, which actually sits in between. It's a feature phone which has the browser and the internet connectivity as well. And you already know that it is very popular in India through Jio. So that is another operating system, but this is the worldwide market distribution of mobile operating systems. Now, before we proceed into the next stage, I just wanted to show you some of the key app statistics. So it will be an inspiration plus an awareness for anybody who decides to venture into this field as to what kind of market potential is there for your apps. First of all, mobile apps are expected to generate almost $189 billion in revenue by 2020. The Apple App Store alone has 2.2 million apps available for download. There are about 2.8 million apps available in Google Play Store. And 21% of millennials open an app 50 plus times per day. Of course, this will depend on the geography as well. But you can see that the future, whatever apps you are developing for the Gen Y and Gen Z, they will be consumers of your applications. So whatever investments you make in terms of development, in terms of learning, in terms of infrastructure, etc., will definitely pay back. 49% of people open an app at least 11 times each day. And 57% of all the digital media usage comes from mobile apps. The average smartphone owner uses 30 apps each month. Now, why it is important to know all these statistics is because if you are going to develop a mobile app, definitely it calls for investment, not just effort. There will be a lot of other investments also, which we'll be talking about, right? You will have to host your backend, services somewhere. You will have to probably invest in cloud. If your app suddenly becomes very popular, you need to have a scalable architecture. Otherwise, your app is going to behave like IRCTC. I'm sorry if there is anybody who's representing IRCTC here, but I have personally faced the experience, problem when the tickets, when you are trying to book the Tatkal tickets, the site is sometimes not available, right? So you should not have the similar problem that when your application becomes very popular, it doesn't work anymore. So you have to definitely make some investment. And if you are making an investment, you will have to do a lot of calculations for which these figures will actually come in handy. Okay, so now that you are aware as to what is the market potential and why this buzz around mobile apps and so on, now let's talk about the mobile context. What do you mean by a mobile context? Now, generally, when people talk about mobile phone, everybody says, what if I ask 10 people, how do you describe a mobile phone? They'll just say, yeah, it's a small device, smaller screen. So people only relate to the appearance of the mobile phone rather than the look and feel. Okay, or if it's a tablet, they might say that it's a larger screen and so on. But actually, when you say mobile is actually a usage scenario. It is just not a form factor. It's not a form factor. Means form factor is nothing but the dimensions of the screen, the dimensions of the interaction points and so on. It is basically a usage scenario. You say that a mobile user is mobile, right? You don't say the device is mobile. The user is mobile. And that is the key difference here. The key difference here is that the user's environment can be unpredictable. Now, if you are using a laptop or a desktop, are you going to carry it in your hand and walk on the road? No. Mostly you would be in a very comfortable situation. You would be in a well lighted place. You would be seated. Most probably it will be an air conditioned environment. So you can make some assumptions that the user is very comfortable and is able to interact with your application. So when you're developing an interface for a desktop application or maybe an application which is supposed to be used by a from a laptop browser, you don't have to give much thoughts about it because you can take many things for granted. But when you're developing a mobile application, user's environment is unpredictable. What do you mean by that? User may be sitting, he may be standing, he may be walking, he may be even dangling outside the footboard of a local train in Mumbai or Chennai. So the situation may not be very comfortable for the user, number one. And number two, have you ever observed when you are required to use both hands when you're using an app and when you're using a single hand? So when you're using an app or when you're using your mobile phone with a single hand or with one hand operation, you have to design the interface in such a way that the user is able to conveniently use it. Otherwise, by the time he's trying to fiddle with your interface, he might drop the phone down, right? So you will have to think about these things like who is using the app and when he is using it, why he is using it, what will be his situation. So if it is, for example, a cab booking application, say for example Ola cabs or something like that, most probably the user is on the road, he is like on the move and he wants to instantly book a cab. So you can't be delaying his experience there, because if there is a friction in his usage, if you are going to ask him, now you log in, enter your OTP before you enter and so on, if you give him multiple stages, which we call as friction, if you give him all these different stages that he has to go through to use your app, that's the last time he is going to use this app, right? The minute he finds another app which can save a little bit of effort and time, he is going to switch to that. So it requires a lot of planning. You will have to think very well. You have to think through what the user is going to do with your app and when he will be using it. What is it that you want the user to do? So accordingly, you have to build it. Now, every app need not be the same. And that is what we are going to talk about in mobile context. So we have different kinds of contexts that we can design for. Like an application that you're developing for entertainment may not be built in the same way that you would build one for a productivity application, right? A productivity application itself means to save time, whereas the entertainment application means kill time. Objectives are different. One is to save time, one is to kill time. So you will have to keep this in mind before you develop the application. So we'll talk about that now. Another thing is that mobile users expect the apps to adapt to their location and surroundings. What do you mean by that? Now, if I am searching, say, for example, I am on the road, maybe I'm like, planning to, go to a movie theater suddenly. And if I search for a particular movie name, if it is going to give me results from some other city where I am not in, right? Maybe it remembers my older search or whatever it is. I might have searched for some theater in Delhi or Mumbai, and if it is, it's going to show me while I'm in Bangalore. It doesn't make any sense. So I will expect that the app behaves as per my need. So if I am in Bangalore and I am using this app, I want the results, I want its behavior or functionalities adapted to my need. The same app somebody else will be using in another location, he may get a different behavior. So the user expects the app to adapt to their location and surroundings. I'll just give you one example. There are so many examples that we can talk about when it comes to personalization. Basically, it is a question of personalization of experiences. So mobile users expect a personalized experience. Mobile users expect the apps to remember the sign-in status unless it is a very sensitive and very critical application like a net banking or a payment application where you don't want to remember the sign-in status for additional safety. And there are of course legal requirements and compliances also that you're not allowed to keep people signed in because it can obviously lead to issues. Or the users also expect to record past activities. So if you're say ordering through Zomato or Swiggy, etc., for your and you search, you select your preferences. If I am a vegetarian and if I am only going to search for vegetarian food all the time, why would I have to enter my preferences every time? So the app should ideally give me an option where I need to mention that, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I am in this locality, and this is my preferred cuisine. Maybe I like South Indian cuisine. I don't want to even see North Indian cuisine or maybe Italian cuisine and other things which are appearing in that, right? So if I want to save time, the app developer can actually give these options in the app to store my preferences so that next time the content and search results can be customized based on my choices, right? So that is how mobile users expect. So understand that mobile, normally when you say a mobile app, a person using a mobile phone or a tablet, normally he will be the sole owner of that, right? Unless you have kids and you have to give it to them to play or something like that. Otherwise, as adults, most of us have our own device and we have our emails, we have all our communication applications, messaging apps, everything in this. So it is almost like our personal device. So even the apps should give me the same option, that I should feel that the app remembers me. The app should have options where it remembers my preferences, my settings, my choices, etc. So that every time it need not ask me, what do you want to have, vegetarian or non-vegetarian, or where are you right now, which location your residence is, and so on. It need not ask me all these questions every time I use it, right? So that is the meaning of personalization. Now, if you look at the statistics,
Sir?
yes.
Sir, you were talking about the personalization of apps.
Can we take
right?
the questions towards the end if you don't mind? Because otherwise we will run out of time.
Sir.
Thank you. So if you look at the statistics behind the when and where people are using mobile apps, so this is a very interesting thing. And you can see that 91% people use mobile phones or mobile apps when they are at home. 83% use while in the washroom. 73% use it while having dinner. 72% use it at work. And you can see all sorts of situations like, when with family and friends, while waiting in queue for appointments, while shopping, while watching TV, during the commute to work. In fact, I thought that people will be using more while commuting, but on the contrary, they are using it more when they are with family and, while watching TV, not while commuting. Probably while commuting, they are all sleeping. And you can see that this is the research given by this particular site, appventures.com. You can go through that. So that is about the usage scenario. Now the next problem that we have is, so usage scenario, as I mentioned, is something that you have to keep in mind when you're designing a mobile app. Now the next challenge for a developer is this huge variety of devices. You have all sorts of devices there, different screen sizes, different functionalities, different resolutions, different sizes, shapes, right? It is not standard, it is not consistent. Now, if I go to the market to purchase a laptop today, maybe you have standard screen sizes, maybe like 2 or 3 different screen sizes is what I have to target if I'm developing a desktop application. But for a mobile phone, there is no limit. I mean, the number of devices, the variations are so it's so wide. It's such a wide variety that it's very difficult to build for one particular size. Which means when you're developing any interface, you will have to first of all design for any of these. In case you want your user to use your application without any issues, your application must be responsive to each and every form factor that you're seeing in the screen. Whether it is a 10-inch screen, whether it is a smaller screen, the smallest mobile phone, or maybe it's a smartwatch. Your app should work on all these. And when you say it should work, it is just not about the showing the content, the text. There are bigger challenges which I'll be showing in the next slide. So some of you might have already experienced it as well. So I'll just give you a difference between what are the physical differences between a mobile device and a desktop. A desktop generally has a full keyboard with real keys. So just I am using a full keyboard with real keys here. Whereas a mobile phone will have a limited, or most probably it's a soft keyboard or a virtual keyboard, a soft input panel, different names they call them, but basically it's a virtual keyboard with very limited keys, and they are all much smaller in size. Coming to a desktop, I can actually use a mouse, which is a hyper accurate pointing device, which means I can point it exactly where I want and I can click it. So if there are links which are very close to each other, I don't have to bother. As long as I have a mouse, I can go with pixel perfect accuracy and I can click on that link. Can you do that on a mobile phone? Why? Your finger is a pointing device. Is this accurate? Absolutely not. My finger size and your finger size will be different. And when you are using your finger, if your links are all very close together on your screen, on the app, if your links and buttons are all very close together, and if every time I'm pressing the wrong button unintentionally, probably that is the last time I'll be using the app, right? This is an obvious thing that desktops and laptops come with large screen, and you can have the option of multiple monitors. Like I have connected another monitor here as my secondary monitor, so that I can also view both the screens at the same time. Whereas in case of mobile phone, all I have is a small display, whatever is the size of the screen, that's all I get to use, right? And to add to the problems, it can also rotate. You can have a landscape or a portrait mode, right? So you'll have to design for both. A desktop normally comes with very powerful CPUs and GPUs, whereas a mobile device has less capable ones, unless it is a very high-end device. Now, the golden rule or the principle that you have to follow as a developer is always develop for the least capable device, because if you develop for the high-end device, only a small percentage of your users will be able to use your app. Majority of them who will be using a less capable or a cheaper one, they will not be able to use your app. A desktop provides you a larger disk space, but then this is a problem that all of us face. Smaller storage, every now and then it keeps giving message saying that your memory is full, delete. So you're not able to install new apps, you're not able to download anything new from the internet and so on, just because of the storage concerns. So you have to keep this in mind as a developer. Coming to the experience, now so far we have been talking about the physical differences. What about the experience? A desktop, this we have already discussed. Desktop is typically used for predictable locations, whereas a mobile can be used in unpredictable environments. A desktop is generally good for open-ended browsing and research. You want to like open 100 tabs, which I normally do when I'm researching for any one item. Each and every link will be opening in a new tab, and then we always feel that, okay, we have to come back here. Okay, I never go back there, but then those tabs are always open, right? And finally, when the browser decides to crash, that's when all the tabs get closed, generally. But in case of a mobile phone, you generally use a mobile phone for one activity at a time. So you can just go there, quickly search for some information and get out. You can't just keep opening multiple tabs, switch between tabs and so on, unless of course you're using a high-end device or maybe a larger screen and so on. It's easy to switch between many tasks in mobile in a desktop. All you have to do is minimize the screen, maximize the other one. You can keep them side by side. You can do whatever you want with it. But whereas on a mobile device, you normally are focused on discrete individual tasks. So the experience is completely different here. User is focused and comfortable, whereas the mobile device user will be often distracted or busy. As I said, he may be outside, he may have to dodge the traffic, especially in Indian cities. If you keep looking at a mobile phone and walk, you do not know, when you are going to fall down. There might be a lot of holes on the road. So you have to be designing, keeping all these things in mind, like what differences will be there in the device that the user is using and how the user is actually using it. In case of a desktop, user is able to install recommended browser. So you might have seen many of the applications, especially the modern rich applications. If you're trying to run it on an old Internet Explorer, older version of Internet Explorer, it will not work. Why? Because the Internet Explorer, the older version, they have stopped development, they have switched to Edge. So you can actually give a message saying that you can write a script in your application saying that if the browser is Internet Explorer. So normally in the server, there is a way that you can actually read the string, the user agent, we call it. You can actually see what is the browser the user is using. And I can write a script saying that if the, the user agent is this version or that, I can display a message saying that please use a modern version. You might have come across this in many websites that will tell you please use a modern version web browser like Chrome for best results or something like that. Whereas in case of a mobile device, user is restricted from installing many things. Why? Because first of all, the app, the browser might not be available. Second is within the app, if you're actually using a web view, for example, to display HTML content, that may not work on the user's mobile. So you will have to actually consider these things. And the other important difference for which there is no parallel in desktops and laptops is that, as I mentioned, mobile users expect the mobile apps to interact with the environment. And when I say interact with the environment, it means take inputs from everywhere. It can be from sensors on the phone, like your built-in clock, ambient light, compass, camera, thermometer. So some of these phones, high-end phones, come with options like thermometer, accelerometer, etc. And you may also have to take inputs from other applications like messaging applications, calendar applications, and so on. So if you see applications like Truecaller, it is able to see or it is able to detect messages coming, calls coming in, and so on, right? Likewise, calendar. There are a lot of applications which can read your calendar, and then if you're trying to book a movie ticket, for example, and then if you have a conflicting meeting scheduled at that time, ideally your app should prompt me saying that, are you sure you want to book at that time because there is a meeting in your schedule, right? I don't see any application currently doing that, but that is a kind of thought process that as an app developer you should have. How do you actually help the user avoid making mistakes? So the things to consider while mobilizing content. When I say mobilizing content, it means while developing a mobile app, is who is using your app and what are your users doing when they get your app? Where is your app being used from, whether at office, at work, or while traveling, etc., etc. When is your app being used? Is it being used when the user is like relaxed and having all the time? Maybe just before going to bed. Some people have this habit of watching old movie songs or something very relaxing. So, or sometimes you may be trying to use it when you're really busy at work or maybe while traveling and so on. So you have to design experiences based on that. And why are the users using your app? What is the purpose of the user? Why is he using this app? And how are the users accessing your app? Again, the question is whether it is while traveling or while stationary and so on. And is their device highly capable? So this is your checklist. When you are developing an application, if you don't have all the answers for these questions, if you have not given a thought to whatever we discussed, that is a mobile context, your app is going to be, I will tell you that it's like, it's not going to be compatible with the user. And just like several other million apps which have been developed and deployed in the store, they are all orphans. Nobody is bothered to download. And even if somebody downloads, it will be there. I have so many apps on my mobile phone which I have never opened for the past like 1 year. And maybe if I have time, I'll sit and delete. But I'm just waiting. The minute it says that there's no more memory, then I'll go and delete them. So that is what I said. If the developers are not aware of these things, the experience that their app will provide will be horribly wrong and it will not be successful. So anybody who is interested in development should first consider these things before getting into the coding aspect. It is very easy. If I know Java, if I know some programming language, whatever I will be discussing, I'll be tempted to straight away open my IDE and start building an application just like a web application. But that is not going to be successful, and that's not the right way to do it. So this is actually taken from a book. I'll share the link. So there are these 5 types of applications or experiences that you can actually develop. One is called the utility experience, which is basically for short task-based scenarios. Like for example, calculator or a weather application or a clock, etc., where it takes minimal input from you. It is just giving you at a glance information. You just go there, view, and come out. It's a utility app. There are locale-based apps which actually use geolocation data to add context to information. The best example for that is Google Maps, right? Based on your location, it is going to give you content. Then there are third category, which is informative type. The only goal of that app is to provide information. And the importance is on providing the relevant information like news sites, Google Reader, Wikipedia. These are all applications which actually are informative in nature. Then there are productivity applications which are task-based applications like net banking, e-commerce, shopping, food ordering, and food delivery applications, and so on. These are all task-based applications which are supposed to save time. And then the fifth category is the immersive type, which is designed to consume the user's attention. Now, how is the experience going to be varying in all these things? When you say immersive, it's supposed to be generally like, designed to consume the user's attention. So if it is game or a video application, you might have noticed that they normally give you a full screen option. So there is no way that you can see the other things in the phone, like, your all the other application bar and your notifications. Everything is like hidden from view so that you can be like fully engrossed in that app and get the best out of it. So that is primarily meant for all the entertainment applications. But when you're working on the other kind of applications, you have to keep in mind that the user is not bothered about entertainment. I mean, if I build a net banking application where the minute I click on the app, if it's going to show me a very attractive video, loading video and graphics and all that, it's wasting my time, right? And I will just look for an option to delete it or get rid of that application. So this is just for your reference. At a glance, you have this different types of application experiences that you can develop. So you can refer to this slide when I share this later. So we have talked about the introductory part, that is what is mobile apps, why this buzz around mobile apps, etc. Then we talked about mobile context. We understood on what way mobile application is different from a desktop application or a web application for that matter. And then we spoke about what are those things that one has to keep in mind when developing an application. So we just talked about the application context and so on, right? Now we will talk about how to develop mobile applications. Now, typically when you want to develop a mobile applications, you have many ways of doing it today. So I have put all those in under these 5 categories: native apps, web apps, hybrid apps, cross-platform, and no code and low code approaches. Now, this is what, I mean, by the way, these are not taken from any textbook or any video tutorial or anything of that kind. So this is all based on pure research and observations in the last 10 years. And these are all subjective. So what I consider as a web app, somebody else might consider as a hybrid app and so on. But the industry, this is the way that generally these apps are classified. Let's talk about each of these now in detail. Let's talk about native apps. As the name says, native, that means it belongs to that operating system, right? Exactly. So Android, for example, a native app is nothing but a binary executable image that is explicitly downloaded and stored on the file system of the mobile device. So if I have an Android phone, I can download it from the Play Store and store it on my file system. In case of iOS, I can do the same thing from an app store. And generally, these apps are distributed through the corresponding store. You have different names for that. Play Store is for Android, App Store is for iOS. For Windows, it is called as Windows Marketplace and so on. But these are executed directly by the operating system and they are not dependent on any other supporting layer. So this is a critical difference. When you say native app, means those are supported by the operating system directly. They don't need any intermediate layer, unlike the other kind of applications which we'll be talking about. These are typically launched from the home screen. There is an icon, start icon, that you can actually press and launch the application. It doesn't require any container app. There is no need of any web view or any kind of component to run this application inside that. it directly invokes the API of the mobile operating system. Now, this is how the block diagram looks like for a native app. And you can see the native app basically does all these API calls. Now, API, as you all might be knowing, stands for Application Programming Interface. So as a developer, you would be basically working with these APIs. You will use these APIs in your code and get access to each and every all these different services that you're seeing on the right, whether it is your input devices, that is your touch and keyboard, the Wi-Fi, GSM, microphone, speaker, camera, vibration, accelerometer, GPS, storage. So all these functionalities and sensors of your device, you can access it through this API. You want to access the camera in your application. Maybe you're developing a photo application. You want to access the camera, you will use the API for the camera, and then you will call those methods, which will in turn turn on the camera, turn off the camera, and so on. Now, when you want to build a native app, today there are multiple options. That's why I told you in the last 10 years there have been so much evolution in this field. So when you want to develop a native app, there are these first-party SDKs. First-party SDKs are nothing but the ones which are provided by the vendor themselves, like Google. They provide you Android. Android themselves give you Android SDK. iOS similarly comes from Apple. Windows, UWP, it's an SDK which comes from Microsoft. Tizen, as I told you, it's an operating system developed by Samsung, and they provide you the Tizen SDK. So these are provided by the respective vendors themselves. Now, the way you actually develop the applications, native applications, is very simple. As you can see this simple block diagram, the developer will write the source code. As I said, they will use the different APIs. We will talk about what language, etc. soon. But the basic principle here is that the developer will write the source code. He will also use all the resources, that is the images, the media files, videos, etc. Whatever is required for that application, he is going to package everything together using the software development kit. The SDK stands for the software development kit. The SDK consists of the compiler, the linker, the executable, and of course the compiler and linker, which actually compile the source code and resources and converts that into what we call the executable, which is the binary file. And that is not directly deployable in the store. If I build an application on my Windows desktop, it is an exe file, right? I cannot just deploy it on the store like that. Likewise, on each of these mobile platforms, the binary has to be packaged, and that is done through the SDK. It creates what we call the distributable packages, and it is deployed to the respective stores. Now, let us understand for each of these platforms how this works like. If you're developing for iOS, the code you will have to write using Objective-C or Swift. Objective-C was used earlier, but Swift is a modern language which Apple introduced a few years back, because Objective-C was very difficult to learn and people didn't really like to work with Objective-C. So they decided to introduce a very modern language called Swift. And as the name says, it helps in faster development. So you have to write using these languages, and you will use a tool called Xcode, which runs only on Mac, by the way. So if you're developing an iOS app, you need to have a Mac. There will be a lot of solutions, what people call as the Hackintosh, which means it's a machine, it's a Windows machine where you do some tweaks and then try to run a Mac OS and so on. But these are not officially supported and not approved either. So you have to use an Xcode IDE on a Mac if you want to build an iOS application. And when you build that application, the final distributable package, as you can see, has the extension of IPA, and you will actually deploy it in the App Store. Coming to Android, you can develop either using Java or Kotlin. Java is what has been used for a long time, but Android, again, they decided to introduce a new language called Kotlin. So today, most of the articles and videos and tutorials from Google, they are actually promoting Kotlin. So using one of these languages, you can actually build your application. You use the Android SDK, which comes with its own IDE called Android Studio. It comes with its own emulator and so on. Finally, when you build the application, you get what we call the APK. I'm sure all the Android users are familiar with this term, APK, and that you can deploy to the Play Store. If it is Windows, you can see that the language is different here. Language is either C# or VB.NET. The tool is Visual Studio. The SDK is, of course, Windows 10 SDK. The distributable package is AppX or Apex, and then you deploy it to the Windows Marketplace. So what do you understand from these three slides? That there is nothing in common between these three platforms, right? So as a business, for example, if I am running a company, or if I want to develop an application for my end users, And if my end users are scattered across these three platforms, there is no way that I can develop once and deploy everywhere, right? I need to have three different development channels, one for iOS, one for Android, one for Windows, because you see the tools, the languages, the skills, they're all completely different. So the approach is similar. As you can see in all these cases, the approach is similar, but the tools and the languages are different, which means to develop as well as to maintain. Now, why to maintain? Any application that you build, you have to continuously keep upgrading, you have to improve the features and so on. So both development and maintenance becomes very, very expensive. So this is something which only probably those who can really afford to have that kind of teams, because definitely if you're trying to build one after another, by the time you develop, for the last mobile operating system, you would have lost so many users, right? If I decide to first build for iOS, then I will build for Android. So the Android users will have to wait for a long time, right? By then they would have gone to the competition. So this is very important from a market perspective. You need to get apps to your ideas to the market quickly. That means you need to have three parallel teams, design teams, development teams, and so on, which is going to be very, very costly. Professional mobile development shops, they do have such teams. They will have separate teams, separate workflows for all these different platforms, so that they can get the best product out in a short span of time. Now, the second category of apps is what we call the mobile web. Mobile web, when you talk about mobile web, these are written using web technologies, unlike the specific languages that we saw in the native apps like Kotlin, Swift, Windows, C#, etc. You don't have to have separate languages and tools. You can actually write in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which means you might have understood now that whatever you build will work on all the platforms. In this case, the code is actually executed by the browser and not by the operating system. Now, the native apps, we saw that the application is directly executed by the mobile operating system itself, whereas here it is executed by the browser. There are various launch mechanisms. You can type the URL, you can click a hyperlink, or maybe you can scan a QR code, and or you can click the home screen shortcut, various ways in which you can launch the app. And various architectural approaches are possible. Either you can have this complete web application running on a server and you're just rendering it properly on your device, whether it's a mobile or a tablet, you're just making it responsive web design, and you're fitting it to the device. Or you could actually return what we call the JSON data. And the second point you can see, that's a format called JavaScript object notation, which means you're just giving what is required, the data points, whereas the application will have pre-built containers, which are nothing but UI elements, which will populate the data which you are receiving from the server. Or they could be what we call progressive web applications, which are installable and can behave like a native application. So you might have seen that Flipkart, Twitter, all these applications. There are two kinds of applications. One you might have noticed one thing called Flipkart Lite or Twitter Lite. Those are actually built using this approach. So in case of a mobile web application, you can see that the application is not directly calling the APIs. Unlike the native apps where we have seen, the application is calling the APIs, right? In this case, the native application is directly calling. Whereas in case of a mobile web, you can see that the calls are being done by the browser. It is not done by the application directly. Application is running inside the browser. There is a rendering engine which is making the API calls. Because of that, it doesn't get access to all the features. You can see that touch keyboard is accessible, but for the mobile web cannot access many of the device functionalities. And the difference between a mobile website and a mobile web app is that a mobile website you normally visit by browsing and the UI is static, whereas in case of mobile web app, it can be a little more interactive, can be touch optimized. So you can develop for either of these experiences using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and one of these frameworks that we are talking about. So for mobile web, we have a large number of frameworks. As you can see, Angular or mobile Angular UI, Bootstrap, jQuery Mobile, PWA, and then there is a list of other options that are available here. I'll just talk about the first 3 or 4. The mobile Angular UI is a mobile UI framework. Applications are developed using Angular, JS, and Bootstrap. So if you're a web developer already having this skill, you can straight away get into this development without having to learn anything new. And basically this mobile Angular UI provides the mobile components that are missing in Bootstrap. And there are no jQuery dependencies, no fat bootstrap.js. If you're not familiar with web applications, just ignore these points, whatever I mentioned. So some of the apps which are developed using mobile Angular UI are actually given in this particular slide. None of them are very popular, but this is what is actually given in the website. Coming to Bootstrap, Bootstrap is basically a CSS framework which helps to make your website responsive. It means it can work on tablets, phones, computer, desktops, and so on. It basically adjusts the style sheets, and it comes with its own version of vanilla CSS. But you also have an option to use other CSS preprocessors called Less and Sass. Again, if you're not from web development background, just ignore this point. And you can see at the bottom how a responsive web design works. So here on the right, you can see on a larger screen, for example, there's a larger image, there are 3 columns. It's a 3-column layout, right? But here, as you move to a tablet, you can see the number of columns reduces to 2. Size of the image also reduces. And on a mobile phone, everything comes to 1 column, single column format, where there is only scrolling up. So we have discussed about Angular UI, we talked about Bootstrap. Now we'll talk about jQuery Mobile. This is basically a jQuery library. Once again, this is all meant for web developers who are already working with these technologies, so that they don't have to learn Kotlin or Swift and so on to build an application. And there is a customizing library called Theme Roller, which can be used to download a custom theme. And you can see the process is very simple. And these are some of the applications which are actually built using this jQuery Mobile. You have IKEA, it's a very famous provider, right? Service provider. So IKEA, Walt Disney, and then you have SlideShare, Stanford University. These are all these applications you can see, they are all built using jQuery Mobile. They may have recently updated to some other framework as well, but this is what is given on the website as of now. Coming to progressive web apps, this was introduced by Google. These are web applications which are designed in such a way that it makes it feel like a platform-specific application. So what exactly is this? So progressive web application means progressive enhancement, which means in most of the new modern browsers and modern devices, there are a lot of capabilities which are enabled. So it will look for that. If it is available, it will utilize it. If not, it will go back to the older core experience. Then they use features like service workers and web app manifest to make your app installable as well. So you might have seen, okay, this is the official site. And just to give you an idea, you might have seen in many of these websites, when you go there, it gives you a pop-up saying like this, add to home screen, right? So Pinterest, you can see, is developed using this. Forbes, this is Book My Show. Book My Show is developed using progressive web application. Flipkart Lite, another popular application, which is developed using PWA. This is AliExpress, another e-commerce application. So what I wanted to show is it is not necessary that you have to only develop using Android and iOS SDKs. We also have the option to develop using all these different approaches if it's a web application. The difference between these two is that a native app will give you full device access, whereas a web app will give you partial access. Speed is very fast in native app, whereas in the web app it is fast but not very fast. Development cost is expensive in native apps, whereas web apps it is reasonable. App Store is available, you can deploy to the store, whereas web app normally it is like a web URL. You go to the URL and that will ask you to install or maybe add a shortcut to your home screen and so on. And approval process. So whenever you submit a native app to the App Store or a Play Store, there is a certain certification process which goes through. It has to be approved. That is mandatory for native apps. Whereas a web app, there is no need of taking any approval. You can just keep on updating every day, and then you can host it in your server. So that is about web apps. The third category is hybrid apps. Hybrid apps has a characteristic that it is a native app with embedded HTML. So as the name says, hybrid, it's a kind of a union of both native apps and web apps. It has the benefits of native apps. It gives full access to the APIs, App Store presence, etc. Selected portions of the app are written using web technologies, and the web portions of the app can either be downloaded while the app is in use or packaged within the app. So if it's a news application, for example, I don't want to hard code the news and then put it on the app, right? So while the user is using it, maybe the shell will open in the mobile, but then the content will be downloaded as the app is in use. This is how the mobile, the block diagram looks like for a hybrid application. You can see that you have the option of calling both the native app API calls as well as the API calls through the HTML5 and JavaScript. So it is like a best of both worlds. And you can see you have full access to all the device, features, all the device sensors and so on. Now, what are the pros and cons of hybrid apps? Advantages means allows code reuse across platform, because whatever you develop, the main code that you're writing in HTML, CSS, etc., that will be usable in all the platforms, iOS, Android, etc. Only the shell, the container application needs to be modified. The disadvantages are, number one, there is a user interface lag because of the extra layers of abstraction. Because you have got a browser, it has to run the HTML code and so on. There will be some user interface lag, and that will be noticeable, especially on smaller devices, or if your application has a lot of scrolling and all that, you might suddenly feel that the screen is getting stuck while moving, or maybe the full screen is not fully loaded and so on. Only certain subset of native functionality is available, and it requires recompilation and resubmission to distribution network, which I just explained, that your app has to go through a certification process whenever it is submitted to the store. So this is a kind of overview, ready reckoner as to the difference between native, hybrid, and web. So you can see the advantages of hybrid. They are all sitting in between native and web. So it is both fast as well as it is reasonable cost-wise. It is available in the App Store. The approval process is low, has a low overhead, and so on. So hybrid apps were very popular until few years back. But today, there is a new breed of apps called cross-platform apps, which have actually taken place. We will discuss about that now. Before I go to that, what are the popular hybrid apps? We have PhoneGap or Apache Cordova, Ionic Framework, Appcelerator Titanium, and many others like whatever listed there. So PhoneGap or Cordova, basically it's an Apache project. It's an open source mobile development framework that allows you to use web technologies for cross-platform development. And basically the application executes within wrappers targeted for each platform, which is what I explained earlier, that it will work inside a container. PhoneGap is actually a proprietary offering from Adobe, and very recently in October 1st, in fact, they discontinued the project and they made this open source. And there are a lot of applications which are built with PhoneGap, which you can see in their website. I've just shown some of the applications here. Coming to Appcelerator Titanium, this also uses web development skills to quickly build applications. And they provide a JavaScript-based SDK with over 5,000 APIs for all these platforms, iOS, Android, Windows, and so on. And what they've promised is that you can reuse 60 to 90% of your code across platforms. When you're building for multiple platforms, you can reuse at least 60 to 90% of your code, you can reuse. That's the information which they share. And then they have so many marketplace modules for extended capabilities. This is the official site you can go through. These are some of the applications. For me, I mean, I'm not very familiar with many of these products which are actually using this accelerator. So we discussed three types: native, web, and hybrid. Now let's talk about cross-platform applications. And I'm sorry, I'm actually going beyond the scheduled time. I hope it is okay if we extend by another 10 minutes. So cross-platform, we have different types. We have Xamarin, Flutter, React Native, NativeScript. These are very hot technologies today. In fact, most of the startups, especially in Bangalore, if you look at it, where they have an idea and they want to get it out to the market soon. Like for example, Bounce. There's a service called Bounce which allows you to pick up these two-wheelers and go from different places, right? Now, if you are developing an application for such a service and you want users who are both iOS as well as Android users to use your service, obviously, if you're developing a native application, we already saw that you need to have separate teams and separate life cycles and so on. There you can actually use these cross-platform applications. Like, for example, they use Flutter. And React Native is another one. So let's quickly talk about what are these cross-platform applications. So firstly, let's talk about Xamarin. Xamarin is an open source app platform from Microsoft. Earlier, it was a separate company. Microsoft acquired a few years back. So they allow you to develop both iOS and Android applications and Windows applications using C#. So all the .NET developers are just like that. They can start developing mobile applications. If you know .NET, if you know C# development, there is no need to learn anything new. You just have to know how to use the Xamarin SDK. It's very easy to actually build an application using C# and you can reuse many of your code, whatever you have used for your ASP.NET and other projects. You can reuse that code as well. And you can build for multiple devices. As you can see, you can build for iOS, Android, Mac OS, TV OS, Watch OS, and so on. and they allow you to share the C# logic across platforms. And there is a product called Xamarin Forms, which allows sharing of the UI layer as well. So you have two variations. One is Xamarin Forms, which allows you to share the UI layer code as well, whereas the Xamarin Android, Xamarin iOS, etc., which are specific to the platform, still allows you to share the C# logic. And recently, earlier this year, Microsoft has announced that the next generation of Xamarin Forms will be called as MAUI. In case you come across this term, understand that it is the next generation of Xamarin Forms. It stands for .NET Multi-Platform Application UI. This is the official website which you can refer to. These are some of the applications, major applications like UPS, Alaska Airlines. The third icon, can you recollect what it is? It's the Academy Awards application, by the way. Then Microsoft News application, which is running on your desktops and on your mobile phones. Good Food, Azure mobile app. Basically, Azure, for administrators, they actually provide an application which can be installed on mobile phone. They're all developed using Xamarin. Coming to React Native was developed by Facebook. You all might have heard of React. React is basically a library built by Facebook for their own Facebook portal. They open sourced it, and then they also introduced React Native for Facebook applications, which is now open sourced. That enables Android and iOS app development using JavaScript and React. So if you're a web developer, you already know JavaScript and React. It's very easy to start developing for mobile phones without learning anything new. The same, maybe you just have to install some tools, but for there also they have done, they have provided a new tool called Expo, which allows you to build apps in the browser. So if you're a React developer, you can just go to this particular link. Sorry. You can go to this link called snack.expo.io, open up in the browser and start coding then and there. It will give you the app. You can scan it using a mobile phone and it will be running on your mobile phone. Just try it out. It is adopted by both Fortune 500 companies and small companies. And this is the website. Many of the popular applications that you're using today, Facebook, Instagram, Skype, Pinterest, the T is for Tesla. You have Uber Eats. Anybody knows the last icon? That's Walmart. These applications are all built using React Native. Then you have Flutter. So now you can see all the big wigs. Flutter is made by Google. React Native was from Facebook. Xamarin was from Microsoft, right? So all these major software providers are behind these frameworks. So you can understand the amount of effort and investment they are putting on these frameworks. And that's why they are very popular today. Flutter also allows you to develop applications for all platforms, including Android, iOS, Linux, Mac, Windows, Google Fuchsia. Google Fuchsia is, by the way, Google's own operating system. And you can build for all these using a single code base. The Flutter applications are built using a new language called Dart, but it's not very difficult to learn. If you already know Java or C# or C++, learning Dart is just nothing because it's almost similar. And this is the website, and you can see a lot of these sites like Groupon, eBay, Tencent, BMW, Alibaba Group. They all use Flutter. Coming to the last of this series in cross-platform, that is, there you have one more framework called NativeScript, which is also very popular. NativeScript was developed and maintained by a company called Progress. Formerly, it was called Telerik. Some of you who have been into web development must have come across Telerik tools. They used to have very rich set of tools for web developers as well as for other development. They developed this framework, and what it allows you to do is, it is an open source framework where you can develop native mobile apps with Angular, Vue.js, TypeScript, or JavaScript. If you're knowing any one of these frameworks, you can start building native application using NativeScript. And this allows you to build a native UI without WebView, which means you don't necessarily run this HTML JavaScript application inside a WebView, which is nothing but a browser component. It will directly run like a native app. And you get 100% access to all the iOS and Android APIs. This is the website, and you can see a lot of applications which are built on NativeScript as well. So that was the fourth category. So we spoke about native apps, we spoke about web apps, we talked about hybrid, we talked about cross-platform. Now low code and no code. Low code and no code means a low code mobile app development platform allows users with minimal coding skills to develop mobile apps. It is ideal for professional app developers. because they help save time by removing much of the hand coding. Whereas a no code platform, as the name says, is a platform where you don't have code at all. You can, even if you're a beginner or a professional, you can simply go and use drag and drop and all those components, and you can build applications. But what you can do with these platforms is very limited. You have probably like, templates which you can actually access. Whatever templates are provided by them, you can reuse. So if you just want to have a small application for your own business, or maybe for a friend, you want to build an application for his business, something like that, then you can actually use them, which is like, with very little effort, you can actually bring a mobile app. Now, in the beginning, we saw why mobile apps are so important today. Knowing its importance, even these companies like Microsoft, AWS, and Google have all invested in this, and they have also got some frameworks like Power Apps, Honeycode. Google App Sheet was recently in the news. There are many others like AppyPie, Appin, etc., which are available, Zoho Creator, etc. So you can actually explore these things if you are just keen in getting an app on your mobile phone, not really bothered about developing your skills, developing your mobile application skills, and so on. Basically, you just want to get your content on a mobile, then this is the solution for you. Now, having discussed all the different types, that is native apps, web apps, hybrid apps, cross-platform apps, and low-code and no-code approaches, 5 types of approaches that you can have. Choice is yours, how you want to develop. Again, in a large company with large teams, it will be decided based on multiple criteria. But for smaller developers who are probably working with startups or maybe smaller teams, or maybe if you're an individual developer, you have to see basically 2 things. One is, what is your time to develop? Number 2, what are the skills you have, and what is the time that you can invest in learning new skills, etc. So if you look at basically the skills that you have and the time that you have to develop the app, based on that, you have to choose one of these. Of course, based on your choice, what you can do will be limited. If you want all the features of your platform, then you have to build a native app. But if you're ready to compromise and use only the features which are available in the respective platform which is available, then you can go with any one of these frameworks like whatever we discussed, cross-platform or hybrid web application and so on. Now, irrespective of the development framework you choose, when you want to develop an application, this is a typical life cycle. You start with inception. You think about an idea, or maybe you're collecting it for somebody else. You understand the requirement. Then you have to do a little bit of market research to find out who else is there, who is offering a similar service, what are the features they provide, and you should have a USP, a unique selling proposition for your app. You have to define your mobile app goals and objectives, and then comes the conceptualization part. You have to start talking about or decide. You have to start designing your wireframes, which are nothing but low fidelity mockups. You can even draw a hand-drawn sketch, or maybe you can use many of the tools, wireframing tool. And then you have to decide the app development tech stack. What is the tech stack that you will use? So based on what you want your app to do and what kind of users you are targeting, you have to decide the tech stack. And then you will have to go into the design stage where you will start defining the backend of the mobile app first. So mobile app doesn't mean everything will run on the mobile phone. All of you know that when your mobile phone internet connectivity is not there, many of the apps don't work. Why? Because they're all connected to other services, right? So you have to design those backends. What are those APIs that you want to use? If the APIs are not readily available, you have to build that as well. And you have to finalize the user experience based on what we decided or what we discussed, the application context. Then finalize your wireframe, test your prototype. Then you go for developing the application. So never ever directly get into the 4th stage unless you go through the first 3 stages. That is a big mistake which many of the developers do, because in their enthusiasm and out of their passion, they directly get into developing the app without giving thought to all those things. So what happens at the end is you develop an app which may or may not be successful, right? Once you develop the app, before you publish it, it's very, very important that you test it thoroughly. When you say testing, there are multiple levels of testing, types of testing that you have to do. You have to do unit testing, integration testing, security testing, user acceptance testing. And finally, when your application is given to a select number of users, we call it as a beta testing. Once the testing is done, only then publish to App Store. Because if you are in a haste, many developers have made this mistake that they publish it in a hurry to the store without properly testing it, and they get a very bad review. And because of the reviews, even after they improve the application, nobody is willing to download it, because as soon when I want to download an app, I will go to the review and see what people have posted. And even if you put 1,000 messages after that saying that, I have corrected all those issues, people are not going to believe you. So ensure that you get it right the very first time. And once you publish to the App Store, gone are those days when you just have to put it in the store and relax. The Google Play Store, App Store will feature your app saying today's featured app, and people will download it. You will get money. Today it's very difficult. Competition is so huge that you have to do separate marketing and announcements. You'll have to do a lot of publicity on that. And most importantly, right from the time when you publish, you have to start reading the reviews for reported bugs, etc. And you have to keep updating your app. You have to use app analytics tools to monitor the usage of the app, enhance the features and performance. So if you feel that people are struggling with a certain feature, or if they are not able to use a particular feature effectively, you have to redo your design. These are some learning avenues for Android, iOS, and web technologies I've just shared. You can go to these links. You can access these courses for free. Of course, there are so many other paid courses which you can go through, but this is what I can share as free courses for your use. So wrapping up, we discussed about what mobile apps are, why it's important today. We discussed all the important major mobile platforms. We talked about the mobile device characteristics, the considerations for app development, and understood what is the mobile context. And then we discussed all the tools and frameworks for mobile app development. Also talked about app development lifecycle and learning avenues. If you have any questions, I'll take them now.
But actually, the questions are being posted in the Q&A section.
Thank you, Mr. Sivaraj, for your wonderful overview presentation on mobile application development in a very, very short time of 1 hour, little more than an hour. So it is a vast subject, and you have done excellent justice to the topic. And definitely, there are much more to learn from you over and above the overview presentation. So you have given the complex scenario around mobile application development, and also what are the frameworks available for mobile app development. So it is an excellent presentation, I could say. There are generally, yeah, I mean, you have totally demystified what goes on in mobile app development. So, but as I was telling, that we didn't touch the coding part, though we know that how to go about coding, but we have not really touched the coding part, which I hope that we can run as a separate workshop or something like that at a later date. I hope you will be able to support us in this activity.
It will be my pleasure. Absolutely.
And yeah, then there are, I have few questions. Maybe you can give your answer in a brief way.
Sure.
Is there any specific prerequisite for mobile app development, or what one has to really learn to do mobile app development?
Okay, so I assume that this is coming from students. So first thing what I will suggest is, as we have seen, there are so many frameworks that you can use to develop. So you have to target one framework rather than trying to learn everything in one go. Because once you get the knack of developing in any one of these frameworks, the rest is easy. So pick up a skill set which you are already familiar with or which is easy for you. So as you have seen, either web technologies you can use to develop applications, or if you're very particular with a particular, about a platform like Android or iOS, spend some time learning. It's not very difficult. So once you're learning the programming, the rest of the things like, the user experience and the other designs will come naturally to you as you start building the applications. I hope that is answered.
Okay. And what about the prospects for the freelance mobile app developer?
It is very good, but the field is very competitive as well. So initially there will be some struggle, but once you are able to successfully make your mark in the market, and you will get good referrals, and there will be a lot of work for freelance development.
Sir, I do have a question. Sir, when you stated about the free apps, which contains ad or limitations, but we are using WhatsApp, which does not have any limitations or any ads. then how is WhatsApp getting benefited or profited by the app, sir?
It's a good question. I think we can discuss on this for a complete session. So I'm not representing Facebook, who decided to acquire WhatsApp for, for a very large sum. You must be, aware of it. So what I'm just giving you is from a solo developer's perspective. Okay, let us forget all these enterprise apps and large-scale social apps which are provided for free for different other reasons. I will not like to touch on that now. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, and you said personalization of apps are needed for the users. But during personalization, we give all the data to the app in order to enhance the in order to enhance the appearance and experience.
Experience. Yeah.
But is there any assurance for the safety of a data?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So generally, when you say personalization, there are two ways. One is that you can store the settings in the user's device itself, right? Or I could actually sync it to my server or to the database so that in case you decide to reinstall the app, I can sync it for you, right? Back.
Okay.
So this is an ethical thing which every developer will have to keep in mind, because you are collecting a lot of sensitive information, confidential information of the user. So there are some best practices that one has to follow. First of all, you need to ensure that everything is encrypted. And second thing, it is not available for anybody else, even for you. Right.
Okay.
So the architecture of the application has to be designed keeping these things in mind. There are some industry standards. You might have heard about GDPR and so on. So there are some industry standards one has to comply with. And not only that, all these app vendors also have published guidelines on how you need to actually handle that data.
Okay, sir.
And GDPR compliance, is it to be taken care by the app developer or by the mobile service provider?
Depends on who is developing that, who is capturing and storing that data, right? So in some cases, it will be both service provider as well as the app developer. If I, as the app developer, decide to take, my customers' data and store it in my premises, in my databases, right? Then I will be responsible for that.
Okay.
Sir, then there is an application called as the Android emulator or the something called as emulator, which works on PCs and desktops. And it gives us the access to install the mobile apps to the computer and use it. How does it function, sir? Like in terms of the format?
Okay, so to give you a very brief answer, so it is, as the name says, it is an emulator, right? So when you're developing an application, you have to test your application, right? So just like how you would actually test it on your mobile device, you are having a virtual representation of the mobile. So it is just simulating those APIs so that if you have a button in your application, it will be rendering there. And when you click on that button, you can see what is the code that you have written for that button, which is getting executed. So that way you can test it. But the emulator is not a replacement for the actual device. Ultimate testing will have to be done on your actual device.
Okay. So like, can emulator be used for real time or like real time days, sir? Like,
no,
can WhatsApp be? No.
It's meant only for development.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session, sir.
Sivaraj, can you give some briefing on security concerns while developing the mobile apps?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So
security consideration.
Yes. So as I was mentioning, right? So as a developer, that is one of the priorities that we should have to ensure the security of the data, which is provided by each and every customer. So if it is sensitive information, first of all, we'll have to tell upfront what we are going to do with the data which is being collected. We have to get the user's consent. So there are some standards which are out there. There are a lot of guidelines, by the respective app vendors, the OS vendors that you have to follow. You have to take the user's consent and let him know exactly what you're going to do with data and who will have access to it as well. We have come across a lot of news recently that many of the sites and all were hacked. Many of the data got compromised, right? So that is one critical area that we'll have to see. So the rule of the thumb here is that don't collect any information which is not necessary for your app. So I would personally like to store everything in the user's device only and not putting on my server, because once I keep it on my server, then it is my responsibility to maintain it. But as long as it is on the user's device, it is a shared responsibility, right? My application is not going to reveal it, but if the user decides to share his password or maybe his personal data elsewhere, that is his problem. So I will always prefer to put it on the user's mobile only, so that I will be safe from any legal issues tomorrow. But again, depending on the kind of application you're building, you may have to take a call on that.
So it is okay. I mean, these are something to do with the recent banning of this application by government, right? The Chinese applications.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What kind of changes may be coming up in terms of new apps which may be using machine learning or AI technologies?
Oh, that's a very good question. In fact, today, any application that you build, if it is not an intelligent application, when I say intelligent application, it has all our sensory features, right? Like voice, for example, you want voice interaction with the application, or you want like text to speech conversion, or you want natural language processing, like ability to autocorrect. So many things that you can actually introduce in your application. So that is what we call as intelligent application. So fortunately, mobile developers need not have to build everything from scratch, because there are ready to use APIs provided by a lot of service providers, including the leading cloud platforms, Microsoft, Google, AWS, all of them. If you see, they all have their own ML services, machine learning services. You can readily subscribe to them. Of course, it will be charged, but you can build applications easily with that.
Okay. Are there any code repository for mobile app developers like GitHub or something like that?
Yes, GitHub, there are plenty of projects. There are many open source projects which are in GitHub, where developers have actually posted the source code. So, I mean, Google search will give a lot of leads on that.
Okay. How do you take care of the slow speed of the internet in mobile app?
Very good point. In fact, when I mentioned about testing, that is one thing that we all test. So unlike a web application or a desktop application where we only test for the UI and for the functionalities of this application, in case of mobile phone, we have to see all these things, like, what happens when the network is not there, number one. If it is disconnected, will the user have an offline experience? Or if the network is slow, how will the application behave? Will it cache the data and let the user use it? Like that. So you will have to plan based on your application needs. You'll have to do the testing for all these different situations. So that is not only for network, even for the battery. So when the battery is going to battery saver mode, I mean, most of the mobile devices have a battery saving feature, right? So at that time, it will perform in a degraded way to save the battery life. So how your application will work. So all these things are done during testing, and you have to design accordingly.
Okay. This memory usage is one of the parameter, basic parameter for app
Absolutely.
development.
Yes.
How much memory? Is there any way of optimizing the memory usage in?
A good question. So in fact, this is one thing that some of the developers actually miss, because they try to use the. Yeah. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So I was mentioning that for the memory usage, this is one thing that some of the developers actually make mistake, that they try to store everything in the phone memory and not allow the user to store in the expanded store, the extended storage, that is the SD card. So SD cards, of course, you can always upgrade easily compared to upgrading your in phone memory. So if as a developer, if you take care to store the data, or if you provide the option for the user to switch to the secondary memory, that is the storage, and also allow him to manage the memory in terms of clearing the cached content, in terms of saved content, like your images, you have an option to go there and frequently delete and so on. So if you can give such features to the user to manage this memory usage in your app, that will be good.
Okay. How to identify fake applications, mobile apps?
Okay. So when we say fake, there are multiple things here. One is that we may be given an app which is supposedly coming from a reputed service provider. Like, for example, I think I might think that I'm downloading NDTV app. It might be a fake NDTV app, right? That's the question, right? So I can look at the name of the publisher, the developer, the store who has uploaded it. So generally, when all these major businesses are hosting their applications, they will post it with their own name. They will not give it to somebody else to host it. So that is one way of checking. Second thing is just to go through the reviews. So if you go through the reviews itself, you can see if people have posted, if it is, having any concerns that would have been highlighted there. But we have to be very careful. Otherwise, it is very difficult.
Sir,
Okay. Can you give some?
Yes, sir. Please proceed. Sir,
Can you give some project ideas for students? Mobile app development. Any project ideas for students?
Absolutely. So for students, it is not about running a business, right? It is more about showing your expertise. So it's very simple. Whatever applications you are using regularly on a day-to-day basis, try to build a clone of it or try to make a better version of it. Like things which are not available in that app, try to find out a few pain areas. Ask your friends, ask your family members, or maybe you yourself might have noticed some of the limitations of an app that you're regularly using. Try to build it maybe with a different name. Don't use any of those proprietary names or logos. Do it on your own. But ultimately, what you want to do is present your knowledge, right? To actually demonstrate your skills. So if you can try developing popular applications like food delivery applications, or maybe e-commerce applications, ticket booking application, etc., that is more than enough.
And of late, many of the mobile phones, they come with ready-made applications built in. Like, they bundle the applications. How to get into bundling with this type of applications, with the mobile operators?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Is there any way that?
Yeah, this is in fact a high-end topic. In fact, some of these are linked with the APIs provided by the respective app vendors also. So it's actually like, an advanced concept where you are providing your own in one way to say that, you're providing your own counterpart to say Google's repertoire of services, right? So in Google, you have all your Gmail, YouTube, and all the G Drive and other applications. Likewise, when you're providing your own collection of apps under one umbrella, it can be done, but it is a slightly advanced concept for discussing during this session. So, but when we are taking the platform-specific training, I can demonstrate that.
Okay. Is there any funding available for mobile app development?
Funding as in sponsoring?
Sponsoring, funding.
Okay. So, mobile app development, actually, investment-wise, it is very less.
Is there any source available for funding?
Yes, I understand. So, the mobile app development, in fact, other than the hardware that you have to procure, the mobile devices and the system, the tools are all free generally. Whatever tools I have actually demonstrated, they are all free. Now, backend services, of course, they are on different cloud platforms, right? So there are packages provided by each of these vendors. So you will have to get in touch with, if you go to their website itself, you will find like all these vendors provide, free services for almost a year. Azure provides about $200 free credits. Google provides about $300 free credits. AWS provides equal number of credits. And for people who are interested in business, they have separate schemes like BizSpark. I don't know how many of you know about BizSpark. Just check it out. So those who are interested in having a startup or so, they will give you complete assistance. So I think, with this, we can easily develop the application.
Okay. And right now, mostly the Apple, Google, they are basically dominating the market. Is Microsoft really lost in the game?
Yes, in fact, that's a sad part. Microsoft had a very nice platform, that is Windows Phone. They tried their level best, but unfortunately, they could not penetrate the market, because already Android and iOS had taken the lead. Even though the platform was very good, because of the timing, probably they were not able to make an impact. So they have withdrawn the Windows Phone actually last year.
So what would be the reason, sir?
Well, there are multiple reasons. Microsoft wanted to focus more on cloud and the emerging areas, and they didn't want to get into competition with Android and iOS. Probably that is what most of us believe.
Okay. So it is not
I think
about
they
the
lost in the
OS.
mobile OS. They didn't have the mobile OS proper.
They had
OS.
Windows Phone. In fact, they had Windows Phone. It was initially Windows Mobile, then 6.5. After that came with 7, then it came 8, 8.1, and finally they came with 10, Windows 10. But there were a couple of things. One is that they were completely dependent on Nokia. After they acquired Nokia, the devices were being made only with Nokia, and it was not being made by unlike Android, where you have devices being built by n number of manufacturers. Windows phones used to specifically come from Nokia, or maybe maximum 1 or 2 from other vendors. So though it was very good quality phones and low price phones, unfortunately they were not able to get into the market, because the app presence is also very important, right? So the number of applications which iOS and Android had was far too much than what Microsoft could actually even get it even after a few years. So they decided to focus their efforts elsewhere.
Okay, there is a question specific to Arogya app. Okay, any idea which framework has been used, and does it use Google App Sheet?
Okay, Arogya app, the entire source code is available on GitHub, but I have not gone through that yet. So whoever has asked this
The
question,
recent controversy.
Yes, recent controversy is there as to who developed it and so on, right? So in fact, they have published
but still the government says that they don't know who has developed it.
Of course, there will be multiple, partners when developing such applications. It will not be one agency or team which actually does it. It's a large-scale application, so multiple, people would have cooperated, but the government owns it, and they have put the entire code in GitHub. So whoever has asked this question, if you just search Arogya's, app in GitHub, you will get that source code. You can explore that.
Okay, can we develop the mobile app using crowd sourcing?
Using crowdsourcing?
Yeah, basically like multiple people.
I got it. So if you see large-scale teams which work in large enterprises and so on, that is the way we do it. But it's not crowdsourcing. Basically, it is like a large team will be there. Like somebody will be working on, for example, the registration module. Somebody will be working on the payment module. Somebody would work on the intelligent, application part of it. And they have version control systems, and they have all the DevOps, like tool chain to actually build it. So if somebody is implementing, I don't know if there is already a public crowdsourcing application development system like this, but yes, it is actually doable. It is not very difficult in case somebody is interested.
Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Sivaraj, for your excellent presentation and also taking up the questions, varied types of questions. And as I was mentioning, definitely, we need to have a follow-up session. There is no go. I think we'll be troubling you a little later.
Absolutely, sir. It will be a pleasure to do it. Thanks to everyone who attended, and I hope the session was worth your time.
Yeah, and now I request Dr. Shaktivel to formally propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Sivaraj Ambat, Mr. H.R. Mohan, sir, Mr. P.V. Subramanian,
Dr. Shaktivel?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is it audible, sir? Hello?
Yes, sir. It is audible.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all of you. On behalf of the Computer Society of India Chennai chapter, IEEE Computer Society Madras chapter, ACM Chennai Professional chapter, we would like to thank Mr. Sivaraj Ambat, who has delivered a wonderful overview of the mobile application development. It was well attended by participants numbering more than 130. Thank you very much, sir, for your excellent presentation. On this occasion, I would like to thank Mr. H.R. Mohan, Chairman, ACM Chennai Chapter, Mr. P.V. Subramanian, Chairman, CSI Chennai Chapter, Dr. Ahila, MC Member, CSI Chennai Chapter, for their support in arranging this webinar. I would like to thank all the participants who has participated through Google Meet and YouTube channel and actively attended this webinar. Thank you, Anandal. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity, and looking forward to another opportunity soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before we formally close down today's program, we have an announcement. On 7th, we are having a program on cyber security developments in India. So please, we have already announced send the announcement by email, and please make it convenient to register and attend the program. So thank you for your participation. Once again, thanks Mr. Sivaraj for your excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sivaraj.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Right. Good night, Sivaraj.